Pawn Stars. It was the show that turned a dusty Las Vegas pawnshop into one of the most famous stores in the world. For over a decade, millions of viewers tuned in to watch Rick Harrison, his father Richard the Old Man, his son Corey Big Hoss, and the lovable goofball Chumley haggle over everything from Civil War swords to vintage Rolexes. We knew Rick as the sharp-eyed businessman, the history buff who could spot a fake Rolex from 20 feet away, the guy who always got the better end of the deal. But what the cameras never showed us was the weight this man has been carrying behind the counter. Behind the tough negotiations and the easy smile lies a life marked by loss after devastating loss. While Rick Harrison built an empire on reality television, his personal world has been crumbling in ways that would break most people. From the death of a sibling he never even knew, to the recent heartbreaking loss of his son, to the fentanyl crisis, Rick's story is not one of gold and silver. It is a story of survival. Over the past few years, Rick has faced a tragedy so profound that it forced him to question everything he thought he knew about being a father. He has been sued by his own mother, buried his father, and watched his family fall apart in the public eye. Today, we are going to look past the neon lights of Las Vegas and the stacks of $100 bills. We are going to uncover the heartbreaking reality of Rick Harrison's life. From the childhood illness that left him bedridden to the phone call in January 2024 that changed his life forever, this is the untold story of the man from the pawn shop. To understand the depth of Rick Harrison's pain, we have to go back to the very beginning, to a loss that happened before he could even walk. Rick was born in Lexington, North Carolina in 1965. He was the son of Richard and Joanne Harrison. But he was not an only child. Rick had an older sister named Sherry. Sherry was born with Down syndrome, and in the 1960s, medical care for children with special needs was not what it is today. The Harrison family loved Sherry deeply, but her health was fragile. Tragically, when Sherry was just 7 years old, she passed away. Rick was only 2 years old at the time. He grew up in a house that had lost a daughter, a shadow of grief that lingered for decades. His father, Richard, later admitted in Rick's memoir, License to Pawn, that losing Sherry was one of the hardest things he ever endured. He once said, "Little Sherry was born disabled with Down syndrome. She was the light of my life." To cope with the medical bills, Richard re-enlisted in the Navy. It was a sacrifice born of love, but it meant that Rick grew up with a father who was often absent, a father hardened by loss and military discipline. Rick never really got to know his sister Sherry, but her absence shaped the family dynamic. It created a household where emotions were often buried beneath a surface of toughness. That toughness would define Rick's public persona, but it also masked a vulnerability that would surface later in life. Then came another blow, one that nearly derailed Rick's life before it even started. At the age of 8, Rick began experiencing strange episodes. He would lose focus, his body would stiffen, and he would collapse. Doctors diagnosed him with epilepsy. For a young, active boy, this was a devastating sentence. The seizures were so severe that they damaged his muscles. Rick spent much of his childhood not playing outside or causing trouble like normal kids, but lying in bed recovering. He has spoken about how frustrating it was to be trapped inside while other kids were living their lives. But out of that frustration came something unexpected. Rick started reading. He read constantly. History books, biographies, antique guides. Lying in that bed, he absorbed the knowledge that would later make him a millionaire on Pawn Stars. He once told the Epilepsy Foundation, "The best way to entertain myself was to read, so I became very interested in history books." It was a coping mechanism born of isolation. While most kids were memorizing baseball stats, Rick was memorizing the value of 18th century furniture and World War II memorabilia. Miraculously, as Rick entered adulthood, the seizures stopped. He outgrew the condition. But the fear never fully left him. That early struggle taught him to be self-reliant, to live in his head, and to always be calculating the odds. Yet, even as he escaped the prison of his own body, new tragedies were waiting for him just around the corner. The health issues may have faded, but the pain of watching his father age and the chaos of his own romantic life were about to collide in a very public way. Rick's relationship with his father, Richard Harrison, was the heart of Pawn Stars. Viewers loved watching the old man sit in his chair, grumbling insults at customers and calling his own grandson dummy. It was funny television. But behind the scenes, Rick was watching his hero deteriorate. Richard Harrison had been a Navy veteran, a tough-as-nails figure, who once punched Rick in the face for talking back to him when he was 16. Rick never forgot that lesson. He told Fox News, "He really changed my perspective on life and how words have meaning." But that tough exterior began to crack in the 2010s. Richard was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. It is a cruel illness, one that slowly robs a person of their ability to move, to speak, and eventually to live independently. For a man as proud and stubborn as the old man, this was a fate worse than death. Rick had to watch his father, his hero, shrink into a shell of himself. In June of 2018, Richard passed away at the age of 77. The world lost a television icon, but Rick lost his dad. In an emotional tribute on Instagram, Rick wrote, "He will be tremendously missed by our family. He was my hero, and I was fortunate to get a very cool man as my dad." Rick tried to hold it together publicly. He had a show to run, a shop to manage, a family to support. But losing his father opened a wound that never quite healed. And just when he thought things couldn't get more complicated, the knives came out from an unexpected direction. His own mother, the death of Richard Harrison, left a massive void in the family business. The gold and silver pawn shop was built on the backs of the Harrison men. But after Richard passed, the question of ownership became a legal minefield. Joanne Harrison, Rick's mother, inherited a significant portion of the store. Reports indicated she owned about 49% of the business. For a few years, things seemed stable, but in 2022, the walls came crashing down. Joanne Harrison sued her own son. The allegations were explosive. Joanne claimed that Rick had manipulated her into signing over a controlling stake in the pawn shop years earlier, shortly after she had come out of a coma. She alleged that she hadn't been given proper financial documentation and that she was being shut out of the business she helped build. The lawsuit demanded an accounting of the shop's finances, including the fate of nearly $500,000 in silver and cash that Richard had supposedly accumulated. Rick was blindsided. He fired back, telling the Las Vegas Review-Journal, "The allegations are false, and I think that my 81-year-old mother is being manipulated by others for their personal gain." He suggested that outside forces were turning his mother against him. The situation went from bad to surreal when Joanne sought a restraining order against Rick, attempting to prevent him from moving or hiding any assets. Imagine sitting across from the woman who raised you, the woman who changed your diapers, in a courtroom. That is the reality Rick faced. The legal battle dragged on, bleeding the family dry emotionally and financially. It was a betrayal that cut deeper than any business deal gone wrong. While the cameras kept rolling, Rick was navigating a war with his own blood relative. This wasn't a reality show plot, this was real life, and it was ugly. The lawsuit highlighted just how fractured the Harrison family had become. Money, fame, and the pressure of the spotlight had turned them against each other. Although the specifics of the settlement were kept largely private, the damage was done. Rick's relationship with his mother was never the same. But while Rick was fighting his mother in court, another disaster was brewing in his personal life. Rick Harrison has never been lucky in love. In fact, his romantic history reads like a tragicomedy. He has been married 5 times. Yes, 5. His first marriage was to a woman named Kim in the early 1980s. That union lasted only 3 years, but it produced 2 sons, Corey and Adam. After that came Tracy. Rick married Tracy in 1986, and they stayed together for 25 years, finally divorcing in 2011. That marriage gave him his 3rd son, Jake. Then came Deanna Burdett in 2013. That marriage lasted 7 years, ending in 2020. Rick cited irreconcilable differences, specifically that their tastes, mental dispositions, views, likes, and dislikes have become so divergent. He then married Amanda Palmer in 2021, but that flame burned out quickly, ending by 2023. Most recently, he proposed to Angie Polushkin, a 42-year-old registered nurse, proposing to her with a 6.5-carat ring he found in his own shop. While fans might joke about his inability to stay married, the revolving door of relationships speaks to a deeper instability. Rick has admitted that he struggles with commitment and that the trauma of losing his sister and his health issues as a child left him with a fear of being vulnerable. Each divorce was a small death, a failure that added to the weight on his shoulders. But none of those divorces compared to the phone call he received on January 19, 2024. That is the day Rick Harrison's world truly ended. Rick's son, Adam Harrison, was not a regular on Pawn Stars. Unlike his brother Corey, Adam preferred to stay out of the spotlight. He was 39 years old, trying to live a normal life away from the reality TV circus. But Adam had demons. For years he struggled with substance abuse. Rick knew about it. He tried to help. He told a podcast in March of 2024. In his 20s, he had the drug problems. I put him in rehab so many times, and every time he'd do great and then fall back. Rick did everything a parent is supposed to do. He spent the money. He found the clinics. He offered the support. But addiction is a disease that does not care about money or fame. On that cold January day, Adam was found dead. The Las Vegas coroner later confirmed the cause: accidental fentanyl and methamphetamine toxicity. He was only 39. Rick was 60 years old when he had to bury his son. The irony is horrific. Rick built his fortune identifying valuable items, spotting fakes, and assessing risk. But he couldn't identify the fake pills that killed his boy. He couldn't assess the risk of a drug deal gone wrong. In a statement to TMZ, a broken Rick Harrison said, "The fentanyl crisis in this country must be taken more seriously. It seems it is just flowing over the borders, and nothing is being done about it. We must do better." But behind the political statement was a father's raw agony. He posted a picture on Instagram of him and Adam with the caption, "You will always be in my heart. I love you, Adam." It was a simple message, but the grief behind it was immeasurable. In the months following Adam's death, Rick retreated from the public eye as much as he could. He stopped posting as frequently. He leaned on his fiancée, Angie. But the grief followed him everywhere. He sat down for an interview with Graham Bensinger on the In-Depth podcast, and for the first time, he let the mask slip. He admitted that he second-guesses everything now. "When you lose a kid, you second-guess everything," he said. "It's like, could I have done this? Could I have done this? It goes through your brain constantly. There's not a day that goes by I don't think about him." Rick revealed that he had a recurring fantasy about physically forcing Adam to get clean. "What if I just grabbed him, locked him in the back of my truck, and drove him to Oregon and put him in the river where he couldn't get anything?" he asked. It is the desperate math of a grieving parent. If I had just done this one thing differently, would my son still be alive? He knows, logically, that he did everything right. He put Adam in rehab repeatedly. He paid for treatment. He offered love. But logic has no place in grief. Rick admitted that you never see the overdose coming. He said, "There is nothing worse than losing a kid." That interview was raw. It was uncomfortable. It was real. It showed a side of Rick Harrison that the History Channel edits out. He isn't just a pawnbroker. He's a man drowning in what-ifs. And just when he started to find his footing again, life delivered another brutal punch. On November 5, 2025, Rick's mother, Joanne Harrison, passed away in a Las Vegas hospital at the age of 85. Even though they had been embroiled in a bitter lawsuit just 3 years prior, losing his mother was yet another severing of his roots. First his sister, then his father, then his son, and now his mother. Rick's representative confirmed the news, asking for privacy as Rick handled things privately. In just a few short years, Rick had gone from being the patriarch of a sprawling TV family to feeling like the last man standing in a ghost town. The tragedy of Rick Harrison is amplified by the nature of his fame. He is a celebrity because of his family. Pawn Stars was built on the chemistry between Rick, his dad, and his son. It was a multi-generational story. Now, that story is fractured. The old man is gone. Adam is gone. Corey, or Big Hoss, has had his own battles, including a serious motorcycle accident and a GoFundMe controversy that made headlines in 2026. The family that once seemed so tight-knit on screen has been scattered by death, divorce, and lawsuits. And yet, Rick keeps moving. He keeps the shop open. He continues filming. He got engaged. He keeps going through the motions. Why? Because that is what the old man taught him. In that same Fox News interview where he recalled getting punched in the face, Rick said his father taught him that no matter what, you always take care of your kids, your family. If you have kids, you're a father for the rest of your life. Even in death, Richard Harrison is still guiding his son. Rick is still a father to Corey and Jake. He is a stepfather to 3 daughters from his previous marriage to Deanna. He has a responsibility to keep living, even when every cell in his body wants to shut down. But the tragedy extends beyond just Rick. Adam's death highlighted the silent epidemic of fentanyl that is ravaging American families. Rick has used his platform to speak out about the crisis. He doesn't want Adam's death to be meaningless. He wants other parents to see his pain and recognize the signs. He wants the government to do more. It is a noble effort, but it is born from ashes. Every time Rick speaks about the fentanyl crisis, he is reliving the moment the police knocked on his door to tell him his son was gone. So, what does the future hold for the man from the pawn shop? Rick is currently 61 years old. He has more money than he ever dreamed of, with an estimated net worth hovering around $8 to $9 million. He owns real estate in Nevada. He still has the shop. But none of that matters when you are lying awake at 3 a.m. thinking about your dead son. The public loves a comeback story. We want to see Rick Harrison bounce back, get married, and smile again. But the reality is that grief doesn't disappear. It changes shape. Rick recently announced that he is marrying Angie Pelushkin. It will be his 5th marriage. He is trying to find happiness, trying to fill the void. But a wedding doesn't erase a funeral. A new wife doesn't replace a lost child. As Rick continues to film new seasons of Pawn Stars, fans will watch him haggle over prices and crack jokes. But now, when you look at him, you will see the truth. You will see a man carrying a very heavy load, from the loss of a sister he never met, to a father who taught him toughness, to a son who left too soon. Rick Harrison has endured a gauntlet of pain. He is not just a reality TV star. He is a survivor. And if there is one lesson to take from his story, it is this: be careful what you assume about the people you see on television. The saddest people often smile the brightest. The richest people often have the emptiest hearts. And the toughest negotiators are often the ones who have lost the most. Rick Harrison is still standing. But the cost of standing has been everything.